Okay. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Jnana Parama Guyame Yadviganam Sanmanvitam Sarahasyam Tarangam Cha Grihana Gaditam Maya Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Jnanam Paramaguyam Me Yadviganam Samadvitam. Okay. Samadvitam, coordinated. Sa, rahasyam, with devotional service. Tat, of that. Anangam, cha, necessary paraphernalia. Grihana, just try to take up. Gaditam, explained. Maya, by me. Okay, translation purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki. The personality of Godhead said, knowledge about me, as described in the scriptures, is very confidential, and it has to be realized in conjunction with devotional service. The necessary paraphernalia for that process is being explained by me. You may take it up carefully. Lord Brahma is the topmost devotee of the Lord within the universe, and therefore the personality of Godhead replied to his 4 principal inquiries in 4 important statements, which are known as the original Bhagavatam in 4 verses. These were Brahma's questions. What are the forms of the Lord both in matter and in transcendence? How are the different energies of the Lord working? How does the Lord play with his different energies? And 4, how may Brahma be instructed to discharge the duty entrusted to him? The prelude to the answers is this verse under discussion, wherein the Lord informs Brahma that knowledge of him, the supreme absolute truth, as it is stated in the revealed scriptures, is very subtle and cannot be understood unless one is self-realized by the grace of the Lord. The Lord says that Brahma may take the answers as he explains them. This means that transcendental knowledge of the absolute supreme being can be known if it is made known by the Lord about himself. By the mental speculation of the greatest mundane thinkers, the absolute truth cannot be understood. The mental speculators can reach up to the standard of impersonal Brahman realization, but factually, complete knowledge of transcendence is beyond the knowledge of impersonal Brahman. Thus, it is called the supreme confidential wisdom. Out of many liberated souls, someone may be qualified to know the personality of Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is also said by the Lord himself that out of many hundreds of thousands of people, one may try for perfect perfection in human life, and out of many liberated souls, one may know him as he is. Therefore, the knowledge of the personality of Godhead may be attained by devotional service only. Rahasyam means devotional service. Lord Krishna instructed Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita because he found Arjuna to be a devotee and friend. Without such qualifications, one cannot enter into the mystery of the Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, one cannot understand the personality of Godhead unless one becomes a devotee and discharges devotional service. This mystery is love of Godhead. Therein lies the main qualification for knowing the mystery of the personality of Godhead, and to obtain the stage of transcendental love of Godhead. Regulative principles of devotional service must be followed. The regulative principles are called vidhi bhakti, or devotional service of the Lord, or the devotional service of the Lord, and they can be practiced by a neophyte with his present senses. Such regulative principles are mainly based on hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, and such hearing and chanting of the glories of the Lord can be made possible in the association of devotees only. Lord Chaitanya therefore recommended 5 main principles for attaining perfection in devotional service of the Lord. The first is association with devotees, hearing. Second is chanting the glories of the Lord. Third, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from the pure devotee. Fourth, residing in a holy place connected with the Lord. And fifth, worshiping the deity of the Lord with devotion. Such rules and regulations are parts of devotional service. So as requested by Lord Brahma, the personality of Godhead, we'll explain all about the 4 questions put forward by Brahma and others also, which are parts and parcels of the same questions. Om Jnanatimanandasya Gananjanjana Salakaya Chakshrodonmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutadai Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swabharantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shukta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishtamam Shah Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raganaptam Nitam Shajivam Savadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saditam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Bhadan Sagana Laitam Shri Vishakamitam Shah Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhuttadai Shrimante Bhakti Vikas Swamaniti Namane Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhuttadai Shrimante Bhakti Vedanta Swamaniti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachardine Nivisheshu Sunivadi Pachkataris Tardine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So, Shri Bhagavan Vacha, Gyanam Parabhaguyam Me, Yad Viganam Samanvitam, Sahasram Taranangam Cha, Granam Gaditam Maya. The personality of God had said, knowledge about me, as described in the scriptures, is very confidential, and it has to be realized in conjunction with devotional service. The necessary paraphernalia for that process is being explained by me. You may take it up carefully. So, this is the verse which is explained in the purport, is the prelude to the Chatur Sloki, the original Bhagavatam in 4 verses. So, there's a lot of things that are coming to my mind right now, but I guess I'll just go with this thought. But these 4 verses, which we had a seminar on and everything, we can tell by that seminar that there was so much within those 4 verses to be understood and unpacked out. And then the acharyas, they give extensive purports and commentaries explaining the intricacies of the Krishna conscious philosophy, the Siddhanta, and everything like that, knowledge and devotional service. They really unpack those verses, and so they're in short. I mean, it's the 4 original verses of Bhagavatam. But then we also see that, that there's some other thousands of verses of Srimad Bhagavatam that expand upon the same subject matter. So, anyways, that's kind of like the end of that thought. But I was thinking one interesting thing actually would be. It's another whole dimension of looking at the Chatur Slokis, but looking at those verses and then seeing exactly in Bhagavatam, like what verses like touch upon those and explain those points and how it's exactly expanded from that. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport makes a couple of points. A couple of points that kind of popped up in my mind, aside from the main thing, is that Srila Prabhupada makes the point towards the end. He says that such hearing and chanting of the glories of the Lord can be made possible in the association of devotees only. And I remember when I very first started associating with devotees, I mean, you go into classes and things like that. I stayed in the temple for like a month or so, and then I went back to where I was from, and there was a friend of mine who I guess they were in college, and they took a religion class. So anyways, we both like had like a similar understanding of like Krishna's pastimes up to that point. Like, they knew about like Krishna's like childhood pastimes, and so did I, because that was like right after like Damodar Ashtakam, that whole period of time. And so they knew it very well, and I was surprised actually. And so I was thinking, wow, they knew. And then we were talking about it and things like that. And then I had some other friends too. They knew some things also. But Prabhupada makes the point here that the hearing and chanting of the glories of the Lord can only be made possible in the association of devotees. So one may take an academic class, at some university or something, and may superficially hear about Krishna's pastimes, but they won't get the proper understanding, and they won't get purified of their crooked mentality that they have, because someone may go and hear from some college professor or whatever, and as verse was quoted also in the seminar. This what is it? How does it start? A Vaishnava Mako Girnam Putra Harikatamritam. That if someone is a Vaishnav and you hear topics of Krishna consciousness for them is poisonous, exact opposite. And the rest of that sloka explains it, just like you have milk. I don't know who drinks milk that serpents drink from, but someone who's insane does things like that. But if the serpent puts his poison in the milk, and it may look like milk, it may have the same benefits as milk, but it also has the combined quality of being poisonous. So this friend of mine and myself, we both heard, more or less the same Leela, but we both went different places in life. And so many people too, they go to the university and they hear about Krishna and whatever, Vishnu and Brahma and Shiva and all these things. And Srila Prabhupada would mention also that there's so many Bhagavad Gitas, but that nobody's becoming a devotee. And just also before coming in contact with pure devotees, I read some Bhagavad Gita, and then that was it. And my friend also, I told them to read that Bhagavad Gita, and they read it. But the main thing is that Srila Prabhupada gives this example. And it's a very important example. He talks about the iron rod being in the fire becomes like fire. So the devotees of the Lord, they're connected with Krishna. And so when they speak, that has transcendental influence. And so they're able to influence the heart or the soul that's sleeping encased in the material coverings and awaken Krishna consciousness. Jivara Sarupoi Krishna Nichidas. So Srila Prabhupada hits on that point. I believe he's referring to this verse. What is it? Satam Prasangan Mama Vyudya Samvido. This 3:25:25. You don't have to pull it up because I'm not gonna. Don't pull it up. You don't pull it up because I'm not gonna get into that. But that verse is being mentioned here. That the hearing in the association of devotees, that's what acts upon the heart. And so he mentions there's the 5 important angas of devotional service: this associating with devotees, hearing from them, and then chanting. Because we associate with devotees not because it's something fun to do and some social thing, and we need some friends and we feel lonely. But we associate with devotees. All that's there. But the main thing is that we associate with devotees to hear about Krishna, and because otherwise there's so many people that you can associate with this world. There's gas stations down the street. If we want someone to hang out with, we can go hang out with the cashier at the gas station, and some of them are Indian, so they know things about Krishna. But why don't we go and ask them about Krishna? Because they don't have because they're Vaishnavas, they don't have the proper understanding, and so it's very important. And then hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, that's what we're doing. Chanting, we hear about Krishna, and then we speak about Krishna. So the hearing, we should also repeat what we hear. That also helps to remember, but then it becomes realized that we speak it, and then it starts to make sense. So we should read and hear the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, and then we should speak it or write, or somehow there should be some check or there should be some interaction in which it's expressed what we know of the philosophy. Now that we've been in the temple for 5 years, and then it's someone asks us a question, we don't really know anything. Someone, or something like that, what's your understanding of the Bhagavad Gita? And then it's well, I don't really know. I'm second initiated, but I haven't read the Bhagavad Gita. We don't want to be in that situation. So there should, in order to speak properly, there has to be some type of contemplation. We read the Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear the classes, and then we think about it. There should be some mental action. We think about, well, how does this apply in my life? How this information I'm hearing, okay, I'm hearing it, so with this information I'm hearing, how can I utilize that to advance more in Krishna consciousness or to defend myself from the onslaught of material nature? What is actually going on? So there should be some contemplation. And it's important because, Sri Brahma, he was spoken this knowledge, and he definitely meditated upon it. He heard it. He was, this inquiry that Brahma is asking, it's serious. He really wants to get the answer. Sometimes we may ask a question in Krishna consciousness, just to kind of like ask a question, we're like asking a question, but we don't really care what the answer is. So Brahma really cares what the answer is. And so it's important to him because this is a big deal for him. And we can assume that he's been thinking about that, and he's, okay, how to understand how you're working and who you are, Krishna, what is exactly going on. So he's putting forward questions with due deliberance, and he's also very attentive in the subject matter. So it's goes hand in hand, but we should also similarly be attentive in the subject matter of Krishna consciousness. This is all just preliminary information. And so Srila Prabhupada makes that point, the 4 important statements. And so he goes through what those questions are. And this was all covered in the seminar. I'm not going to really get into the Chatur Slokis at all. But pretty much he wants to understand, the forms of Lord in matter and in transcendence. So the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then how is the Lord working with those energies? And there's so many things. Are they under his control? Or is Krishna controlled by them? Are they separate? Are they together? Do they appear all these different, how do those energies work? What do they do? Like this. How does the Lord play with his different energies? Okay, so he has energies, so what's he doing with them? Okay, so Krishna's got energies, he's got this Bhu Shakti, Sri Shakti, the Jiva Shakti, material energy, what is going on with that? And then 4th question, how may Brahma be instructed to discharge the duty entrusted to him? So that's also important. So we understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and and philosophically how the Supreme Lord is acting and what he's doing. And then we also should inquire, okay, what are we supposed to do? And Brahma was asking that. Okay, I have this duty, please protect me. So so how do we do this duty exactly? And so that's different for everybody. We don't have the same duty as Brahma. That's way above our pay grade, as they say. So we have a mission and we have activities to execute in Krishna consciousness. So how do we do that? So some of those things are mentioned there. One other thing that kind of came up in my mind, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in the class also, but this point of, let's see if I can find it, that unless one becomes a devotee, okay, so one cannot understand the personality of Godhead unless one becomes a devotee and discharges devotional service. So that's something that we always hear, and it's kind of basic knowledge, but it's something that we always need to hear again and again, because we're engaging in Krishna consciousness with the goal of becoming Krishna conscious. So, and we're not going to become Krishna conscious unless we engage in devotional service. Just reading or just neglecting service or whatever. We're not going to become. We're not going to advance in Krishna consciousness. It'll be difficult because by engaging in devotional service, in essence, in short, is it means to serve Krishna and the spiritual master and devotees with love, with care, with attention. And so that can be expanded upon, that will be expanded upon for the rest of our lives, what it actually means to engage in devotional service and what devotional service is. But in short, it's just like we have, someone that we really care about, specifically devotees. We want to serve them with care and attention and make them happy. So the process of devotional service is to serve Krishna according to the rules and regulations in Shastra as instructed by the spiritual master, so that Krishna is happy and the spiritual master happy and the Vaishnavas are happy. So the devotees would often preach, and we still preach like that, but especially back in the day, that someone would get some books and they would read it and they would like it, and then they would say, well, you can't understand the books unless you move into the temple. And so then they would convince people to move into the temples, because the whole idea is that if you're so you're outside, you don't have the association devotees, and you're reading the books, you won't be able to understand them properly, because you have to be in the association devotees. Which is true. We can read Srila Prabhupada's books, and we can practice Krishna consciousness to some level outside the association devotees, but then we hit the invisible ceiling. That sometimes that's mentioned with if somebody comes from a different country, they can only progress so high in the corporate ladder before they can't go any further because they're not not American or whatever. Somebody comes and then they can, what's this, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he got as high as he could get up in the political ladder because he was from a different country. He couldn't become the president. He probably could have become the president because he's so famous. So anyways, we hit the invisible ceiling in Krishna consciousness if we don't have the association of devotees. And then what to speak of just hitting the high point. I mean, we may not even hit the high point because we may fall into Maya before we get as high as we can get. So devotional service has to be executed in the association of devotees, and to execute it properly. And so devotees would preach like that to individuals in the beginning days a lot, and then individuals would move in, and then obviously it's self-explanatory. If you're living in the temple with devotees, you experience the bliss of Krishna consciousness, because it's like if you're just by yourself and then you try to have some fired up kirtan, you can, but it's it's kind of difficult to maintain that, to be all fired up by yourself. And then also, so many different things. Just if you don't meet devotees, then it may you may hear about chanting, but then what does that look like? Unless someone specifically tells you to chant on Japamala, you may just chant out loud or something, or whatever. So many different little intricacies are there, so that association devotee helps speed the process. So going back to this verse here in particular, so this was also covered in the seminar, but this verse is mentioning 4 different things. There's Gyanam, Vijnanam, Sarvahasyam, and then this, Anangam, this sadhana bhakti. So knowledge, realized knowledge, devotional service, and then sadhana, whatever's needed, is explained here, the necessary paraphernalia for that process. So that's sadhana bhakti, Krishna consciousness. So Krishna consciousness is being explained by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this verse. And so this is confidential knowledge in the sense that it's not meant for the envious. And Srila Prabhupada makes that point. I think he makes that point in this, or at least he hints at that verse, I think, in this purport. He specifically mentions here this that Arjuna, that Krishna instructed Arjuna because he was his devotee and his friend. So, anybody know what chapter that's from? If you know the exact verse, then yeah, but yeah, it's from the Gita. Krishna explains it. Krishna's saying he's explaining the science to Arjuna because he's his friend and also devotee. Yeah. So that verse is, so how does that start? So I remember the Bhaktosi me sakachati rahasya me tar uttamam. I forget exactly how it starts. Yoga prokta parantara. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. So that verse is being mentioned here. So the idea is that it's confidential knowledge. Oh, and also I forgot to make this point, but it ties in. So the thing is that Krishna consciousness and the quote unquote knowledge of Shastra is there. Anybody can read the books and anybody can, study it. And just like we were talking previously, there's professors in Sanskrit and Gaudiya Vaishnava studies and then, whatever, and this and that. And just so, there's so many people that have an intellectual understanding of Krishna consciousness. But as evident by this verse, It's intellectual understanding is not enough to understand Krishna. You may memorize the whole Bhagavad Gita, but it doesn't mean just because you have that theoretical knowledge of Bhagavad Gita that you can understand Krishna. You can memorize the whole Bhagavad Gita and just have it just completely wrong because you don't have you don't engage in Krishna consciousness. You won't understand the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. That's why Lord Chaitanya, there was that one devotee. I don't remember exactly what it was. Maybe it was in, I don't remember. I don't want to speculate. But when Lord Chaitanya was touring, he met one devotee who was reading the Bhagavad Gita, and people were making fun of him because, anyways, he was reading it upside down, like that or something. And he couldn't read anyway. But his guru told him, to read the Bhagavad Gita every day. And so, anyways, just making the story short, Lord Chaitanya, he paraphrasing, he asked him, why are you crying? And he's saying, I'm crying because when I read the Bhagavad Gita, I'm thinking how merciful Krishna was to Arjuna that he accepted the position of his chariot driver. So Lord Chaitanya explained that this man understands Bhagavad Gita. So he can't read Bhagavad Gita, and he has it upside down. So what is his knowledge of Bhagavad Gita? Maybe if he was to go take a bhakti, Shastra quiz or whatever, he might fail like some of the technical things. Okay, so like what is this? What's the verse in Bhagavad Gita that Krishna explains that he has material energies, whatever. He has 5 material energies, or has 5 gross whatever. He has 5 and 3 subtle. It's Bhumir Apal and Vayu. He may not know that verse, and then all the different whatever. And then Krishna explains this verse in the 2nd chapter, and how does this relate with this verse and that. He may not know all those things, but he knows the essence of Bhagavad Gita. And so one may have and I've seen that also actually within devotional society, that devotees, they have a very extreme, good philosophical grasp of Bhagavad Gita. They can explain it, they know all the intricacies, they know so many slokas, they've done all the, courses, this and that. But then but then they don't get initiated. So it's they understand philosophically everything, but then they don't actually surrender. So we want to surrender in Krishna consciousness. We don't want to have just a theoretical understanding of what Krishna consciousness is like. And that's why Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would give the example of licking the outside jar of honey, that you have to actually engage in the process of Krishna consciousness. So, and when Krishna sees that, so out of his causeless mercy, he becomes pleased, and then he helps one understand the mysteries of devotional service. So that's another aspect that's being mentioned here. And so one important aspect, which I'm stressing, is that we're engaging in Krishna consciousness, and we're reading these things, we're hearing these classes and all that, and we're doing these things, but it has to be accompanied by devotional service according to the sadhana, which is the practice given by our acharyas, or our spiritual masters. And if we engage in that, then we will understand Krishna properly. Because if we don't engage in those things, if we read the books but we don't engage in devotional service, or we read the books and we do some service but we don't execute sadhana properly, then something will happen which it will become evident that that we're going off track, so to say. We may have some philosophical misconception, or maybe philosophically, we can explain everything okay, and we engage in devotional service, but then whatever, we don't chant our rounds or something. If we're not following sadhana properly, not in the sense that it has to be, we don't have to be what's it called, there may be some discrepancies. For instance, somebody stays up late and then whatever, there may be exceptions to the case. That's the point. Someone may stay up late, so they may not get up for Mangalarti. Someone may sick, may not chant the rounds or whatever. But in general, there should be some following of Shastra and the thing, or sadhana. And so, we have to follow the process was given by our acharyas. And so similarly, Brahma was given a process to follow. I'm not going to get into that now, but I want to quote one verse in particular, which states about the Lord's mercy. I'll still find that. So that's, if you want to pull it up, you can. It's Canto 10, Chapter 14, Text 29. And so that this is a famous verse that Prabhupada will quote often, but the Sanskrit is Atapi te deva padam bujo dvaya prasada leshanu grihita evahi janati tattvam bhagavan mahimno nachanya eko pi chiram vichinvan. The translation of that is, my Lord, if one is favored by even a slight trace of the mercy of your lotus feet, he can understand the greatness of your personality. But those who speculate to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead are unable to know you, even though they may continue to study the Vedas for many years. So that's kind of the point that we're talking about there, is that, as Brahma is making this point, is that one may study the Vedas for many, many years, who knows, for a long time, chiram. But if he's not favored by the Lord, he doesn't get his mercy, then he's not going to understand the personality of God. He won't understand devotional service, He'll be engaging in Krishna consciousness for 50 years. But then it's, some basic point, there'll be a misconception about, the nature of Krishna, someone, and then, I've been practicing Krishna consciousness for 40 years, but is Krishna really a person or something crazy like that, and it's what have you been doing the past 40 years, you don't believe Krishna is a person. So it comes by Krishna's mercy. And the thing is, so it's being pointed out in this verse by Lord Brahma, is that we're trying to attract the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, a slight little drop of his mercy. And by that, we can understand his personality. And that will help us to become fixed in devotional service. And so there's different ways of getting that mercy by engaging in devotional service with full enthusiasm, vigor, really taxing our brains to spread Krishna consciousness, or whatever service we have, performing that nicely. There's a lot of different things. I won't cover them all. But just some basic things that Srila Prabhupada would stress is chanting 16 rounds, following the regulative principles, rising early, things of this nature, following sadhana, reading the books, distributing the books, carrying out the orders of the spiritual master, pleasing him, these basic things in Krishna consciousness. Why am I speaking on basic things? Because these basic things are essential to our practice of Krishna consciousness. And generally, sometimes, from what I've seen, is that devotees who are practicing can overlook the basic things. Chanting 16 rounds, reading the books, distributing the books or whatever it is. And some individuals can, superficially rise a little too high. And then they, they read different books, or they read things that are a little bit above their, where they're at in Krishna consciousness or adhikar. And then they think, well, these other things aren't so important that Srila Prabhupada gave, because I'm very spiritual. I feel it in my heart, so I don't need to chant 16 rounds anymore. Or I don't need to read Prabhupada's books because they're introductory, and, I'm done with the introduction, or whatever it is, And then we see that devotees that they may be senior, but then they say, well, I don't read Srila Prabhupada's books anymore. And it's you're more intelligent than your spiritual master. You've learned everything he has to teach you. So we should be careful of that, and we shouldn't develop that attitude. Because even when Srila Prabhupada was on the planet, there's these different problems that he encountered, actually, of individuals. They were just reading specific parts of his books and, getting into this whole mood of thinking that they were gopis, cowherd girls in Vrindavan, just focusing in on that. And not following the four regs. Prabhupada would say that often. And also, too, I didn't realize how serious it was till recently. But I don't know if you've read his Bhakti Vikas Maharaj sends out emails regularly of different quotes and things like that. So recently he sent out one quote, and I'll read that actually, because it's a little surprising. And I know more to the story than this also, which I'll comment upon. So once at a lecture in the Temple Room in Los Angeles in 1970, this is 4 years into the movement, just after moving into the building, Srila Prabhupada asked the assembled devotees, is anyone not chanting 16 rounds? Only one boy raised his hand. It was Bhaktadas, so this is an initiated devotee. Prabhupada said, so Prabhupada, who's not chanting 16 rounds? And then one guy raises his hand. That's crazy. Anyways, even if I wasn't, I would be embarrassed to raise my hand. Prabhupada said, you're not finishing 16 rounds? Well, Srila Prabhupada, he said, I've been working until late at night and only sleeping 4 hours, so I haven't had time to finish. Srila Prabhupada replied strongly, then sleep only 2 hours, but you must finish 16 rounds a day. So, of course, there's exceptions, but, we're not having a class right now about the exceptions to, not chanting at 16 rounds. So, as a general thing, we should go more out of our way to chant our 16 rounds and then to find excuses as to, how I can get around chanting 16 rounds. If you're in the hospital, then by all means, don't chant your 16 rounds. But anyways, so the thing is also, too, that wasn't just that devotee, actually. There was other devotees, too, that weren't chanting their 16 rounds. And I'm not going to name names because it's not important. But there were certain leaders at the time which were actually preaching that you don't have to chant your 16 rounds. That Srila Prabhupada, he gave 16 rounds, but that's in case you don't have devotional service to do, in case you're spaced out, and because there's so much things to do at the temple. There's Sankirtan, they were going out for 10 hours a day. It's crazy. They were going, anyways, the schedule was way different back then. I'm not sure, I think Srila Prabhupada either after this or just around this time instituted 4:30 Mangalarti, because up until that time there wasn't Mangalarti as we have it in the society. So devotees, they were staying out regularly till at least 10, 11 o'clock. And then Maha Saturday was staying out till 1:30. Chanting on the streets of Hollywood, and then they would come back, and then if you stayed out till 1:30, then you were allowed to, I think, sleep 6.5 hours or something. So devotees probably getting up 8 o'clock. That was the regular thing, and that was just that was the norm. It wasn't you weren't falling if you were doing that or something. It wasn't aberrant. That was just how it was. Devotees weren't rising, early. Some devotees would rise early if they did some deity worship, but it was only the pujari that was doing that. So most devotees were rising late, and but there was many devotees actually that weren't chanting their 16 rounds. And so it was being preached that you don't have to chant 16 rounds, just engage in service, and stay, chanting 16 rounds for people that they don't have anything to do. So that was kind of the mood by some leaders actually. And those leaders also, they weren't chanting 16 rounds. And so anyway, so different things happened. And so Srila Prabhupada identified that. There's a lot of different things that were going on during that time. And so the devotees also in that period, they weren't really reading the books so much because there weren't really very many books to read. I'm not sure if maybe the Bhagavad Gita was around then. Krishna book had just gotten released a little bit earlier. And then probably Ishopanishad was there, and Nectar of Devotion maybe. But even too, Nectar of Devotion, that's a pretty complicated book. So anyways, so the devotees, they weren't chanting the 16 rounds, and they were working. And so some of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, they got a misconception in the philosophy. And then this is there in the Leela Amrita, I think, and then also this following Srila Prabhupada. I won't go into details of that, but pretty much in short, they had, and Srila Prabhupada attributes it to different reasons. One reason he attributes it to his godbrothers minimizing him, because at that time also, Srila Prabhupada, one of a devotee was in India. His godbrothers was telling one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples that Srila Prabhupada is not the only pure devotee, and he's not the only spiritual master. Pretty much minimizing Srila Prabhupada. He's not that special. And so that devotee told that to devotees in America, that Srila Prabhupada is not the only pure devotee. He's not the only guru. There's others. And so as a result, Srila Prabhupada, from what I've understood from reading his lectures and just thinking about this and other devotees, is that they began to minimize him. And then there's so many different things that happen about it. I don't want to get into the other details. But, it was just within the movement, it was they weren't, Srila Prabhupada felt, which we're going to take his feelings as important, and the basis of this is that he was being minimized, and the devotees weren't properly worshiping their spiritual master. There may be so many spiritual masters, and there may be pure devotees, but we have our own individual spiritual master, and we hold him up to a high degree. It's not that, okay, I have my spiritual master, and yeah, there's so many gurus, and it's just all the same. That, we respect other spiritual masters of, disciples or whatever, or spiritual masters, God brothers and God sisters. And of course, those who are taking on the role of being a spiritual master and fulfilling that service, we respect them greatly. But it's not that, in our own, Krishna consciousness, we should have high esteem for our spiritual master because we have a personal connection with him, and we interact with him, and we serve him, we get shiksha from him. It has a significant importance in our life, so we worship him very greatly. It's there in the Shastras. It's not like, I have my spiritual master, and there's so many gurus, and he's great, and I listen to him sometimes, and when he comes, that's good, but anyways, he just, it's all the same, all the gurus, it's like my guru, your guru, it's like, what does it matter? That's not the proper attitude a disciple should have. Is the spiritual master has saved my life, I'm eternally indebted to him. There should be that focus, that connection should be there. We may not personally serve the spiritual master for whatever reason, we may not get that opportunity, but we should associate with his instructions and carry out, his desire. And if we do that, we'll feel that connection. So anyway, the Prabhupada was noticing that symptom, and then, like, for instance, I was reading the other day, they put a big, huge picture of the spiritual master in the place where everybody keeps their shoes for some crazy reason. I guess they were thinking when they come into the temple, they're going to see, like, the guru or whatever. And the Prabhupada was like, what the heck is this? He's like, this is ridiculous. And other things, they were putting his picture, like, upside down, and, like, all these things were happening. So the disciples were, minimizing Srila Prabhupada, and there's a lot of details, but I'm just going to get to the main point. And so the main point is that they minimized him, and then they started overemphasizing him. And so they overemphasized him to the point that they were saying that, Srila Prabhupada is God, which is nonsense. But they were preaching that, actually, and they were just preaching that in temples, and they were going on and explaining that Srila Prabhupada is God, that he, and they were asking, well, are you saying that Srila Prabhupada is like Krishna? And they were like, well, some devotees are being a roundabout way, but they were pretty much saying that Srila Prabhupada is God, that he's a super soul situated in everybody's heart, and then they were citing Prabhupada's books in that way, that Srila Prabhupada is not different from God, and then like that. And so the point I'm citing all this is that this is an example of, so these were leading devotees that had this misconception. And some of these devotees, especially the ones that were really pounding that, they weren't chanting their rounds. Some of them weren't rising early. They've been in the movement for 4 months, or not 4 months, 4 years. And they had personal association with Srila Prabhupada, writing back and forth with Srila Prabhupada. But the thing is that if we don't engage in the process of Krishna consciousness, there's going to be like some misconception that comes. Like if we decide not to chant our 16 rounds, or we decide, we don't need to read books anymore, or we don't need to distribute books, we don't need to engage in Harinam, whatever. If we give up angas of the process of Krishna consciousness, something's going to go wrong in our Krishna consciousness. We may not like tomorrow be like thinking, well, I am God, you are God, we all are God. But somehow a weed will appear in our Krishna consciousness, which will detract us from the path of pure devotional service. So these rules and regulations, this sadhana, and this is being one of the aspects that are being mentioned here. The necessary paraphernalia for that process is being explained by me. So these things that were given by the spiritual master, they protect us. This is instructions and this sadhana given by Srila Prabhupada. And there's many reasons, but the thing is that it purifies us. And it's tapasya also. Tapasya purifies us and helps us to become, removes the materialistic tendency. So I'm just going to read a couple verses. These verses are, and you can pull them up. They're in the same chapter, verses 8 and 9, I think. So just go to 8. Let me see the English. I'll just read the English. So, Lord Brahma underwent penances for 1,000 years by the calculations of the demigods. He heard this transcendental vibration from the sky, and he accepted it as divine. Thus he controlled his mind and senses, and the penances he executed were a great lesson for the living entities. Thus he is known as the greatest of all ascetics. Anyways, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'm just wondering what the Sanskrit word is for the greatest of all ascetics, but I'll look at that later. So let's see here. So go to the next verse also. I'll read that too because they're connected. So the personality of God, being very much very much satisfied with the penance of Lord Brahma, was pleased to manifest his personal abode, Vaikuntha, the supreme planet above all others. This transcendental abode of the Lord is adorned by all self-realized persons, freed from all kinds of miseries and fear of illusory existence. I could have just pulled it up in this book also. But anyways, so you can pull up 8 again because I'll talk about that a little bit. So the thing is, Lord Brahma engaged in this penance. And he was purified by that. This tapo divyam. That's Vrishabhadev makes that point. Was it Nayam deho deham bhajani loke kastan kamar arhate bidvajame tapo divyam puchakayena satvam sudyedi asmad shokam brahmanan tvam anantam. So Vrishabhadev makes this tapo divyam, this transcendental penance. Because I was asking Mahotsa Prabhu some weeks ago, I believe, about that this penance. We're reading about that. There's so many people do penance or whatever, and then prayashchitta and all these things. So he's saying that's tapo divyam, that this penance which is conducive for devotional service. So similarly, we have penance which is conducive to devotional service. As I'm mentioning these things, these chanting these 16 rounds, these safeguards that our acharyas give us, this shelter of the spiritual master. The spiritual master gives us shelter in different ways. He gives instruction. He gives association. He gives us rules to follow that keep us safe in Krishna consciousness. So Brahma also was given his own tapasya to perform. And so he did that, and he controlled his senses, his mind and his senses, and he executed those. And from executing those, it's not that just, so that tapasya, that attracted the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we engage in the process of Krishna consciousness, of sadhana bhakti, of chanting 16 rounds. It's not that just by chanting 16 rounds, like whatever, that Krishna becomes obliged to be our maidservant. But, it's by chanting these rounds and following this process of Krishna consciousness, we're trying to attract the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's why, whatever service that we have and we engage in, we have to do it with due diligence. If we're cooking, okay, we cook properly for Krishna. We're distributing books, okay, we distribute books for Krishna, properly. Because otherwise we can go and we can cook and we can cook and just boom, as quick as possible, just knock it out or whatever, screw cleaning the veggies. I don't care if there's dirt, or whatever, I got things to do, or we could distribute books and just whatever. There's so many different ways which, impurities can enter in our devotional service or whatever it may be. But we engage in those different activities of service. It's service. So we're doing it as, and the thing with service is we were discussing yesterday that generally in America, to be a servant is oh my God, it's you couldn't do something better with your life. You couldn't be a big CEO, or you couldn't start your own business or whatever. You have to engage under somebody. So one aspect of service is that we're given that by the master, that, okay, you do this service. It's some activity, it's given to us. So it's not that in the sense that, we should never feel that I'm very qualified for this particular service or whatever it is, that, that this is we should feel that, our spiritual master has given me this service for my benefit. I'm not qualified to uptake it. It's for my own purification, so let me perform it to the best of my ability. Because one thing is that in Krishna consciousness, the longer you stick around, if we have any doubts, we can see that we are expendable. That, if we decide, to pack our bags and go tomorrow, then they'll fill our spot in the temple like that. The show has to go on. That's the thing that they say in the music industry. If they're doing some opera and then the lead singer, voice is shot, then whatever, they got to get somebody else. It's we sold out we sold out this show, and it's there's something's going to happen tonight or whatever. Sometimes too, when I would perform music as a kid, if you would mess up, they say just keep on going. you can't stop in the middle of the piece just because you played the wrong note, and you got to keep going. You got a show to perform. So the same thing, Krishna has his transcendental sankirtan, and whatever we decide, anyways, I won't give extreme examples, but if we decide that, we want to chant 15 rounds and whatever, walk down the street, then all right, so Christians are going to find somebody else to keep that show going. So the service is, we're instruments. That's the thing. And we can be used for instruments in Krishna service or in Maya service. So Brahma engaged in this tapasya and this austerity, and he got revelation. Something changed. He got the mercy of the Lord, and it was evident. It was obvious. It wasn't well, I think I got the mercy of the Lord. I mean, what is that? This Vaikuntha? What am I seeing? It was it was obvious, and he was getting that mercy, and he satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Let me see here, and so the thing also is important. Is that if we really want to have a life-changing experience in Krishna consciousness, generally it's not going to happen just by going, as we used to say, going ham at sense gratification. Just going crazy, just overloading the senses and just being completely hedonistic. That's not going to give rise to self-realization. We think just if we're struggling with Krishna consciousness, we think, well, I'm tired. I'm just going to break all the regs. I'm going to get drunk. I'm going to do everything. I'm tired of just, this being controlled. We're going to suffer more. We're going to suffer a lot more because that's not the process that the acharyas give, is that you just, go all out in sense gratification, and then, realization of Krishna consciousness will happen. If we go all out in sense gratification, generally we see that sometimes people that if they just go crazy into sense gratification, anyways, there's so many different stories of that. But if people they go binge drinking, I remember, I think I used to have friends like that. They would drink a crazy amount and just get super drunk, and then something crazy bad would happen or whatever. They would have a massive hangover, and they would think, well, I'm never going to drink again, And it's not that they sat and they realized that well, if I drink, it's not good for me, and this and that, and nothing good comes from it, or whatever. It's just they just enjoy their senses to the max, complete bogue, and then now they're thinking, well, now I want to renounce tyag. And then it's not situated on knowledge, it's a complete ignorance. I mean, they go down to the darkest depths of ignorance, and then they get some seeming knowledge in the whatever, what do they call that, when they hit rock bottom. And then but the thing is, it's not actually situated in Sattva-gun, so then it just next week they do the same thing, because the heart isn't purified. And so many things like that. And people get arrested and they think, well, I'm never going to sell drugs again or whatever. I'm going to follow the law. Then they get out and they get right back into it because the heart isn't purified. And Srila Prabhupada would make that point. So it's an elephant's bath. So this process of tapasya, which Lord Brahma engaged in, and similarly we're engaging in, it purifies the heart. And by that activity, we gain the Lord's mercy. And so we need the Lord's mercy in order to, continue on in Krishna consciousness. Also the spiritual master's mercy, the mercy of the superior. I think Prabhupada made that point actually in his class. But the mercy of the Supreme Personality Godhead and the mercy of the Supreme Personality Godhead is, I think it's followed by the devotee's mercy, something along those lines. I want to figure out what he said. I remember where he said that was in the pastime, I think, of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So I'll read another verse here. You can pull this one up. This is in Canto 10, Chapter 14, Text 15. So we need the Lord's mercy. And so this is on a slightly different subject, and I'll read the Sanskrit here. So the Sanskrit is, let me see the verse. So it's tat chet jalam stam tava sad jagad vapuhu kim me drishtum bhagavams tadaiva kim va shadushtam hridi me tadaiva kim no sapadyeva punar vyadarshi. So the translation is, my dear, so this is Lord Brahma speaking. My dear Lord, if your transcendental body, which shelters the entire universe, is actually lying upon the water, then why were you not seen by me when I searched for you? And why, though I could not envision you properly within my heart, did you suddenly reveal yourself? So this verse is citing a couple points. Brahma is explaining that, I was looking for you, but I couldn't find you. And then I was trying to, I couldn't even properly meditate upon you, but then I saw you. So what's going on there? And one big aspect is that the Lord gave his mercy upon him. And specifically in this context, Brahma is citing in his previous, his personal experience. So, like sometimes we talk about, before I was in Krishna consciousness or whatever, like I mentioned that story, when I was in Maya with my friend. So it's like, that's like my experience. But Brahma's experience is like completely different. It's transcendental. He's like, well, I think back. He's like, I was looking for you when I was in that ocean, in the Garbdock Ocean. I couldn't find you laying down. And then, so it's like his revelation is, his when he looks in his past is completely different. It's amazing, actually. I really like Brahma. So anyways, gotta have attachment for somebody. So I really am amazed by Brahma and his prayers and everything that he does. He's an amazing devotee, actually. He's also very humble. You think that he would be, when we read his prayers, you don't see that he's so prideful and things like that. In these prayers, actually in the 10th canto, he's asking for the mercy of the residents of Vrindavan and like that to be born as a blade of grass, or like that. He's asking, whatever mercy they can give is amazing. He's the most qualified, but then he simultaneously he's the most humble. We have so much that we can learn from his attitude, actually, in Krishna consciousness. So this particular verse that we're reading, so a couple points actually. So we need the Lord's mercy to see him, and Krishna has a transcendental body. So just like you see me, my material body, like if I don't want you to see me, it's like it's not gonna happen. I can say that, and then whatever I can try to run away. I can run down the stairs and you guys can chase after me. I can get into a car. But it's like, I don't have the ability to just cover myself, or just disappear. I don't have that Shakti. I don't have that power. Krishna has that power. And the thing is that Krishna is not under the jurisdiction of the material energy. He's Sarat. He's independent of that. So like we were talking before, Brahma wants to understand how his energies are working. And so that's the thing. And just like whatever, I may hide, whatever. I may put a blanket on me or like take that thing and put it in front of me so you can't see me. But then there's other ways to see things materially. Just like we have, this infrared, like that. And then this thermal stuff, all that. And then if you go to and you get an x-ray and then you see whatever. So you put, x-ray me. And though I may have that screen covered or be hidden, and you'll see nature of the transcendence is just like, it's amazing. It's like if Krishna wants us to see us, we can see. If he doesn't want us to see us, we can't see him. It's not, it's not by our material, that Krishna's over there, so I'm looking at him. We may be seeing Krishna, but then also too, that even if we're seeing Krishna, Krishna can only be seen by this premandrana through the bhakti vilochanena. And to get back to the main point again, so we obtain this vision by executing the process of Krishna consciousness. And so this rahasyam, this is devotional service, Prabhupada translates this, so rahasyam. And other places, Prabhupada translates this rahasyam also as confidential, just like we were quoting that verse. What is that? Se'evayam, what is that? Se'evayam teda yoga prokta prantadha bhaktosi me sahachati rahasyam etar uttamam. So this is confidential knowledge about, that he is going to explain to Arjuna the transcendental knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. So he's explaining like that. So people that aren't interested in that. They'd rather go and off and try to find, whatever, some secret buried treasure of some freaking pirate or something like that. And then you too, like, what's this Ponce de Leon? What was, anyways, that's what I don't know if it's true or not. You don't know about history anymore. But then the whole idea of him going to Florida was that he was looking for the fountain of youth, so he could be eternally young. For what? For sense gratification, just so he can look good and then to have a bunch of sex. That's really what it boils down to. We have the eyes of Shastra, so we understand that pretty much the material, what it boils down to is, people want to be powerful, they want to enjoy their senses, and then the height of enjoying senses is just sex life. So there's Ponce de Leon, you just want to go and just be young. So it's just nonsense. But the people, they're so eager for material facilities because they don't have the proper understanding of Krishna consciousness. So we have that responsibility to make them understand that, this fountain of youth, like, chill out with that, man. To be, take up to the process of Krishna consciousness. It's much greater than, anything that you can dream of in the material world. I'll quote another verse here, and we'll wrap this up. But this is also a nice verse. This is, if you want to pull it up, you can. But it's the 24th verse of this prayers. All right, we're back online. So this verse, 10, 14, 24. So, evam vidam tvam sakalat manam api sadvat manam atma matai, swat manam atmat mataya vichakshate gur arka labdo panishat shuksha ye te tarantiva bhavandritam buddhim. So the translation of this verse is, those who have received the clear vision of knowledge from the sun-like spiritual master can see you in this way, as the very soul of all souls, the super soul of everyone's own self. Thus, understanding your original personality, they are able to cross over the ocean of material existence. And so, particularly with this verse, I thought was a very nice point, was this, Prabhupada translates here. Well, I don't think this is Prabhupada, but his disciples. Sorry, but this third line, Guravarka labdo petish panishat shuka shuchaksha shusha. And the translation of that is more or less that they receive, let me just look at the word for word here. But they receive this confidential knowledge from the Guru, who is like the sun. So he illuminates, Arka. And then also too, his Bhakti-Vikas Maharaj gave amazing, I think some 14 parts or 12 or something on the name of Arka, which is amazing actually, So so the Guru is like the sun. And then there's also other verses like that. What is it? Chakshurandasya Garnikatas. From Arkadik Sarva, the Shamshamikshana. So the Guru and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they illuminate the darkness of ignorance, and they give the proper knowledge, the proper Siddhanta, the proper sadhana by which we can execute Krishna consciousness, and then we can cross over, which is being mentioned in this verse. So we cross over the ocean of illusory material existence. And so Brahma, that was revealed to him because we cross over into what? The transcendental nature of Vaikuntha was revealed to Brahma about this. So you're going to cross over. This is what you're going to cross over into. Srila Prabhupada would make that point often that, okay, you want to go to California, then you hear about it. The weather's so nice and the beaches are cool and whatever, and the material platform. Anyways, I won't go into all the material glories of California. But they have an amazing temple in Wasika Avenue, where Prabhupada was. So then we get attraction. And Srila Prabhupada's room's there. They have the BBT, and then it's like, oh, I want to go there. So then we hear about it, and we become attracted, hearing the Lord's glories. And that's mentioned so many prayers they mention about by hearing the Lord's glories, we become purified, we gain affinity. There's so many verses like that. So we hear about, the abode of the personality of Godhead. But we hear about it, but then we engage in this process of Krishna consciousness, and then we get purified. So then as that mercy comes, then we begin attracted to it. And we think, oh, actually, spiritual world sounds like a little bit better than the place I was born in. I mean, you don't have to die, and whatever. My parents aren't always nagging me, or whatever it may be, or whatever. Like that neighbor's dog won't be there. Whatever. Prabhupada would joke sometimes to say in the spiritual world that, there won't be any Mr. Nair because he caused so many problems for the devotees. So we're like, yeah, the spiritual world actually does sound like a pretty cool place. I think I might want to check it out. So that affinity is raised there in that sense. So then we hear, and then we cross over. So then we understand also that we cross over because simultaneously, if we want to get to the spiritual world, then we have to understand where we're at. And where we're at ain't the spiritual world. Birth, death, old age, disease, whatever. People getting shot. It's like, this ain't the spiritual world. Atlanta ain't the spiritual world. If we're engaging in Krishna consciousness, it's spiritual. But it's not, we don't read in the Shastras about, Atlanta and then the wonderful buildings and then, 285 and Highway 75 and all that. There's no description. So so this is the position. We're in the material world. And also too, we're in the material world, but then we're contaminated. We have so many, crazy desires that, rush through our mind and our senses are attracted. So we engage in this process of Krishna consciousness, and the main thing is, we should understand that if we follow the process of Krishna consciousness honestly and sincerely, if we carry out the instruction of the spiritual master, if we hear, if we hear from Srila Prabhupada, if we hear from our spiritual master, if we read the books, if we faithfully and sincerely follow the process of Krishna consciousness, then we can have the same result as Brahma. We can gain entrance into the abode of the Lord. We can gain entrance into the association of great devotees. We can receive, amazing instructions which can help change the way that we view this world. We can begin to see the world through the eyes of Shastra, and we can conquer over whatever material desires or inconsistencies may be in our character. But we have to follow the process as given by our acharyas, and we can't deviate from that. Because I mentioned in the beginning of the class, I told that story at length for a reason. But if we begin to change things, if we begin to add things or whatever, do things that we shouldn't do, or as Avadhu Chandra Prabhu's Guru Maharaj, I heard him say one time, Vaisheshekha Prabhu, he was quoting that verse, but he's giving a different interpretation on it. This is Dayatova Shyam Pumsam. That's by contemplating the object of the senses. He was saying that we become attached to for looking at things that we shouldn't be looking at. So if we're living in this, so if we're acting in that way, the thing is that devotees may not be able to tell if we're sincere or not. It may come out in time, but Krishna knows, and Prabhupada would make that point, that Krishna knows if we're sincere or not. And because we can't cheat Krishna. How are you going to cheat Krishna? You think you could cheat Krishna? You're freaking crazy. And so many, devotees tried to do that, whatever. They weren't following the principles, they weren't chanting the rounds, and they tried to cheat Srila Prabhupada. But they weren't able to cheat Krishna, and they were exposed. But if we follow this sincerely and honestly, Krishna will protect us, because we may be put in a situation sometimes where it seems insurmountable, like how are we going to overcome this, like what are we going to do? But the thing is that, Krishna can, in one like that. He can arrange everything completely, He can, what we've been, struggling for years, and we may have to struggle for some time also, just like, Srila Prabhupada struggled for so many years, with different things. I think for like some 10 years, he mentioned he was struggling so much materially and spiritually. But then, we may struggle, but then, Krishna may arrange everything like that. And then as Srila Prabhupada stated, that, when I look back now, I see that was all Krishna's asset. That was all his mercy. So the mercy may come in different ways, but no matter what, we stick to the process of Krishna consciousness, and everything will be blissful and will work out perfectly. But we have to have that faith, and that faith also comes from following the process, from hearing the spiritual master regularly and staying connected. So we got to stay connected. So Hare Krishna. I don't know if there's any quick questions or comments about anything, because I will.
Prabhu, in today's purport, Srila Prabhupada made the statement that Lord Brahma is the topmost devotee.
Yeah.
And it seems like you'll find in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, I'm sure even in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's statements like this where Prabhupada says, this is the topmost devotee of the Lord, first-class devotee.
Yeah.
So how do you understand that? Because there's certain statements like that about multiple personalities.
Yeah. Well, there's different grades of topmost. And so, they're calling me, huh? I guess they want me to comment. Hare Krishna, 1 second. But there's different grades of topmost. And so, it's just like, there's perfect, most perfect, and more perfect. So on the perfect platform, pure devotee, whether that devotee's in, this part of the spiritual world or that part of the spiritual world, they're topmost, and they deserve, full worship and things like that. But, just like sometimes the Shastras say that, like, of, such and such rivers, this river is the topmost, and like that. They give, like, like this is, but there's, like, within that realm of perfection, there's always, like, different grades of perfection. So Brahma's topmost, but then there's also that verse, was it the Swayambhu, not Swayambhu, but what is this? That Shiva also is of the Vaishnavas, he's also topmost. So then there's different verses like that. They're topmost devotees, but there's like different grades of perfection. So, let's see. Hare Krishna.
Remember, we had that verse, Vaishnavanam Yatashambhu.
Thank you.
Also, I want to, say you were making this point about, devotees not following, Prabhupada's thing, and they're saying, if it's like that we don't really need to chant 16 rounds, it's only for people who weren't in devotional service, who weren't practicing devotional service, and this and that. And you see that same thing, it just, history repeats itself so much, and it's the same thing is happening now also. And what do we need to do to protect ourselves from this kind of downfalls?
Yeah. So, how do we protect ourselves from, I guess, reoccurring deviations? So one thing is that we have to, at least so we take initiation from the spiritual master, and we're given rules and regulations to follow, and we're given instructions. And so we have to be intelligent and follow those instructions, actually, because those instructions will keep us safe. There will always be this influence or this party of devotees that take things cheaply, and they say, well, it doesn't matter, if you follow this regulation or that regulation, or, the essence is just to always think of Krishna. So we have to be well-versed in the Shastra. And we have to also, and that's why the spiritual master is there, because he's understood the Shastra and he can explain things properly. Specifically in this day and age, we have Srila Prabhupada's books, and so that should be like generally like the law books. Like if Srila Prabhupada's saying something and then someone else is saying something completely different, then we should be on guard that person may be improperly following. But also, too, sincerity also plays a big part of it, because if somebody is insincere, then they'll be attracted to that. That you don't have to chant 60 rounds, you just chant 8, and you don't have to follow anything like that. So.
I remember once we were talking about a specific god brother of ours, who always made a big show and of being like a very elevated devotee, and like rejected Guru Maharaj, and now he claims to accept him, and back and forth. And we were trying to see, he was trying to see if he can come and be with us, and like and do that, distribute books with us, and do that whole thing again. But after talking to him once, we realized that he hasn't changed even a little bit. And I remember he said one thing which was very heavy but true, but that there's no cure for insincerity. There really isn't. There's no cure for insincerity. What can you do? What can you do when someone is so insincere? What can you do?
Yeah.
The only thing we do is just completely avoid such association.
Jai. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any? I don't know if you have anything, Manaji. Okay. All right. We'll stop there. All right. Thank you. All right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Srila Prabhupada ki.